Sigoni, Sigoni, how's your macaroni?
Hey guys, welcome. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a crochet blanket for beginners. This super simple blanket pattern may be easy, but I promise it's not boring. I like to call this blanket opposites attract, and you can see here why. I mean, have you ever wanted to crochet a blanket in one color, but you also wanted to crochet it a different color at the same time? Well, now you can! This double crochet blanket pattern is so soft, wonderfully cozy, and it's a great mindless crochet project. The Opposites Attract Forever Blanket is part of my Forever Blanket series. The original Forever Blanket didn't make it on YouTube, but you can find the full written tutorial and photos if you'd like to see them in the description box below. And I also have another Forever Blanket coming in another few weeks. For this double crochet afghan, I used 3 skeins of I Love This Yarn in white and 3 skeins in gray mist. You will also need a 6mm or J crochet hook, and then I decided to do the border with my 5.5mm crochet hook. You don't have to do this if you don't have a 5.5mm hook, but I just like the look of it being just a little bit tighter. The border seemed a little too loose when I used my 6mm. You will also need a pair of scissors and a tapestry needle. All right, let's get started. To get started with this pattern, we're going to start with our gray mist yarn and our 6mm crochet hook. Now we're going to create a foundation chain of 145. So to make a chain, we're going to yarn over our hook and pull through. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and just keep chaining until you hit 145. Now, if you've never crocheted before and you don't know how to make a chain or any of your basic stitches, I have plenty of tutorials teaching you the basics, and I will leave them up here in the cards and also in the description box below. This blanket's about 48 by 60 inches, so it's a pretty big blanket and super cozy to snuggle with. But if you want to create a different size, head over to the written tutorial for this pattern and you can find all of the resizing information there. All right, so you should have your foundation chain of 145. I'm just gonna make a small swatch for this tutorial, but it works up just the same. Now for row 1, we're going to double crochet into the 3rd chain from our hook. A double crochet in the US is a treble crochet in the UK. To make a double crochet, we're first going to yarn over our hook, insert your hook into the 3rd chain from your hook. So we have 1, 2, 3, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And now we're just going to double crochet in each chain across. All right, so now we've double crocheted into the last chain and we have our first row of double crochet stitches. Now to move on to row 2, we're going to chain 2 and then turn your work and double crochet in each stitch across. So this chain 2 here does not count as a stitch, so we're going to double crochet into that very first stitch there. And remember that when you're creating your stitches, you're going under both of those loops here. All right, so since that chain 2 at the beginning of the row doesn't count as a stitch, you want to make sure that you end your last double crochet in that last stitch, not in the chain 2. All right, so now we have our second row of double crochet stitches. For rows 3 through 6, we're just going to repeat row 2. So we'll chain 2 and double crochet in each stitch across. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will meet you back at the end of row 6. All right, so I have my 6 rows of double crochet stitches, and now I'm going to change my yarn to white. So you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either stop before you make your full double crochet and add on your yarn like so, or you can just cut off your gray yarn, tie it off, and then retie on a new color. It's completely up to you and what you feel comfortable with. Now to move on to row 7, we're just going to double crochet in each stitch across. Remember, we're starting in that first stitch there. So we're going to double crochet across, and for row 8, we're going to do the same thing. So we'll have 2 rows of white. So I will meet you at the end of row 8. All right, so now I'm at the end of row 8. I have my 6 rows of gray and my 2 rows of white. Now I'm going to switch back to my gray color and make another 6 rows of gray. So for rows 9 through 14, we're just going to double crochet across with our gray yarn. So I'll meet you back at row 14 and then I'll explain the pattern and how we create the opposites attract effect. So you don't want to miss that. So now I'm at the end of row 14. I have my 6 rows of gray, 2 rows of white, and 6 rows of gray. So what we're going to do now is repeat rows 7 through 14 5 more times, and this will bring us to row 54. So you should have 7 strips of gray and 6 strips of white. So I'll meet you at the end of row 54, and you should end on a gray row. All right, now once you're at the end of row 54, you're going to attach your white yarn however you prefer. And this time we're going to create 6 rows in the color white. So basically you should be at the middle of your blanket now, and we're going to be doing the exact opposite of what we were doing before. So we will have 6 rows of white and 2 rows of gray. So just repeat the same pattern we've been doing with the opposite colors until you reach row 108. So I'm going to continue working this blanket and I will show you what it looks like in the end. And then I'll show you how to create the border. All right, so we should be stopping at row 108 right now. Again, I'm just creating a swatch, so this is what mine looks like right now. But you would have your 6 rows of gray, 2 rows of white, 6 rows of gray, and then you would repeat this section here another 5 times. Once you reach the middle of the blanket, you'll attach your white yarn and you'll crochet 6 rows of white, 2 rows of gray, 6 rows of white, and again repeat this section 5 more times. And in the end we will have 108 rows total and we'll end on a white row. So once you're finished with your blanket, we're going to create the border. So to do that, we're going to cut our yarn over and pull that strand all the way through. So here's our middle section here. This is the only place in the blanket where the 6 rows come together. So what we're going to do is create a white border for the gray side, and then we're going to switch to a gray border for the white side. So first we're going to work on this gray side border. Now this is where your 5.5 millimeter hook comes in. The reason why I decided to use this hook is just to make the border a little bit tighter. I felt like with the 6 millimeter hook it was just a little bit too loose for me, but it doesn't really matter. If you don't have a 5.5 millimeter hook on hand, then you can use your 6 millimeter, and it might be better if you chain. We'll talk about that in a second. So what we're going to do is insert our hook into that last stitch of the row, grab our yarn, chain 2, and then we're going to place 2 double crochet into that same space. So right in here. So we have 1 and 2. Now we'll chain 2, skip this next row right here, and then we'll place 3 double crochet at the end of this next row. Just like that. Now, if you don't have a 5.5 millimeter hook for this border, you can go ahead and use your 6 millimeter hook, but instead of chaining 2 right here, I would chain 1, just because it might be a little too loose if you use a chain 2, but that's up to you if you feel like that's necessary. Now we're just going to continue chaining 2, skip the next row, and place 3 double crochet at the end of the next row. Chain 2. So continue with this pattern until you reach the corner. All right, so now we've reached the last row and we're just going to chain 2, place 3 double crochet around this last stitch, then chain 2 again, turn your work so that you're looking at the bottom. You're going to skip 2 double crochet and place 2 double crochet into this space here. So right in between those posts. So we have 1 and 2. Chain 1, skip the next 2 double crochet and place 2 double crochet in between those 2 posts. So you'll have 2 double crochet in between each cluster. So just repeat this across the entire bottom row. Now, depending on if you chose to create the same size blanket as I did, your stitch count might be a little bit different. So it doesn't have to be exact, but basically we should still have a corner something like this. So for me, I'm going to put another 2 double crochet into this stitch here, or in between these posts here, and then I'm going to chain 2, turn my work, and place 3 double crochet around this last stitch, which is also the chain 2 from the beginning. Now chain 2 and turn your work. So we're looking at the side here. And now again, we're just going to repeat what we did on the first side. So we're going to chain 2, skip the next row, and place 3 double crochet around this last stitch. Chain 2, skip the next row, 3 double crochet. All right, so this is the last row where we're working the 3 double crochet in white. So we're going to stop right here. We're going to make an incomplete double crochet here and attach our gray yarn. Now we're going to pull down to make sure it's nice and secure. And now chain 2 with your new yarn. And of course, weave those ends in later so they're nice and secure. Skip the next row and place 3 double crochet into the next row. And of course, we're just going to repeat the same pattern for the side, for the corners, and back around. So I'll meet you at the end when we're ready to tie off our work. All right, so now we've reached the last row where we're going to create our 3 double crochets. And now we're going to chain 2 and slip stitch to that beginning double crochet. So to slip stitch, we're going to insert our hook into that top stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull that loop through the loop on our hook. So now we have our slip stitch and we're ready to tie off our yarn. So go ahead and cut your yarn a couple inches, yarn over, pull that loop through, and pull it all the way through and pull tight to secure. So now that we're done with our border, all that's left to do is weave in all of those ends. Well, thank you so much for joining me for my second forever blanket. And remember that there's one more coming in a couple weeks, and I'm sure over the years I will add plenty more. I hope you enjoyed this pattern. It has so many color possibilities, and I cannot wait to see all the colors that you come up with. If you do decide to make this blanket, I would love to see photos. You can add them as a project on Ravelry or post them on Instagram and use the hashtag Crochet Forever Blanket. That way we can see the huge variety of beautiful forever blankets. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment telling me what colors you're going to use. I'll see you next time.
What is this? A blanket for ants?